Well, if he doesn't do any of the debates, Howie, we're gonna give him another chance. I'm sure he's not coming to the Reagan debate. We'll give him another chance in Alabama, but if he doesn't come there, then I'm gonna follow him around the country. Wherever he goes, I'll go. And we'll wind up talking to each other one way or the other. And he knows that's true.
You're gonna change your travel schedule to go where Trump goes, just so I'm clear.
You bet.
Chris Christie is not backing down from Donald Trump. In fact, he demands a debate with Donald Trump. Of course, he skipped out on the first GOP primary debate. And Chris Christie says, you know what, I'll follow him around the country if I need to in order to secure a debate. Now, he's very critical of Trump's decision to skip these debates and essentially skirt his responsibilities as a GOP candidate. And he even calls him a coward for avoiding the debate with 8 qualifying candidates. He said, quote, there's no other conclusion to come to that he's both afraid of me and he's afraid of defending his record. And if I had his record, I'd be nervous about showing up too. So look, he still has a massive gap to close. Trump is still ahead by a lot. He's a first in the polling for the GOP primaries. Let me give you an example. This is the national GOP RCP poll averages, Real Clear Politics, of course. So the average indicates that Trump is at 53.4%, DeSantis is at 13.9%, Ramaswamy is 6.8%, Haley is 5.9%. Chris Christie doesn't even register on that poll. So it doesn't look good for Christie so far, although he seems to be doing pretty well in Iowa right now. So I don't know, I think maybe these attacks could be helping him a little bit. What do you think, Cenk?
He's not doing bad in Iowa. He's doing pretty well in New Hampshire, where he's now pulled in a second place tie with Ron DeSantis. So the voters in Iowa and New Hampshire get a lot more politics than the rest of the country and a lot more attention. So they know the candidates a little bit better. And if you win in Iowa and New Hampshire, it could change the dynamics overall of the race. And so Chris Christie's a rare Republican candidate that could beat Trump, in my opinion. It would be extraordinarily difficult, near miraculous. I don't think it's easy by any stretch of the imagination. And he'd have to somehow win over the Trump guys who now despise him and that are the great majority of the Republican Party. I'm aware of the odds, okay? But the reason why I've said all along that he has a shot, because at least like unlike the rest of them, he's not a coward. He's not afraid of hitting Donald Trump. It didn't take him months and months of polling and consulting to get to a point where he could lightly criticize Trump, which is where 80% of the other Republican candidates are. So look, now to the downside of Christie, he's done this before, which is follow Trump around the country. But back then he was his lapdog.
That's right, and it didn't work out so well for him.
Yeah, so now all of a sudden he's a tough guy and he's fighting against Trump, but at least he's unreserved about fighting against Trump, and he's very clear about it. And I think that the voters in those 2 early states are noticing. In fact, I would give him more suggestions on how to attack Trump as coward and weak, which are good lines of attack, as opposed to racist or sexist, which is not a good line of attack in a Republican primary. So he's got the right strategy. Let's see if he can get some momentum in New Hampshire and Iowa, and if that translates into any further momentum nationally.
Now, there are 2 other clips from his conversation with Howard Kurtz that I think are important to look at, especially because there's a different line of attack. It's not quite the coward. He did obviously call him a coward, but there's something else that he's been calling Trump that I think could be effective. So let's take a look at the next video.
There is a number in the latest Wall Street Journal poll that really jumped out at me. It said that there was a 73% negative or disapproval rating among Republicans for you. And I wonder, is that the price you pay for coming out swinging?
That's the price you pay for telling the truth. And you know what, Howie? I don't believe that number will last. I absolutely, for one, I don't believe it's accurate, but 2, I don't believe it will last in whatever form it's in. But you can't decide whether to tell the truth or not based upon some poll that they take at a snapshot in time by the Wall Street Journal. What you have to do is tell the truth.
Look, I agree with the sentiment, but it's not just one poll. He's not even registering in a lot of these polls. And what we showed you earlier was the average of the GOP primary polling. However, I do want to go to one more video and I'll talk a little bit about what I think Christie is doing right here.
If Donald Trump had quietly retired to Mar-a-Lago and not contested the election, would you have run?
Well, look, I don't know what I would have done, Howie, but I would tell you this, that what he did on election night to me disqualified him from being president of the United States again. when you go in front of the American people and lie to them on election night and say that you know the election's been stolen, when you had no evidence then and you have no evidence now that it was stolen, because it wasn't. He lost to Joe Biden. Now, I know his fragile ego can't deal with the idea that he lost to somebody like Joe Biden, who had never beaten anybody outside the state of Delaware before. But guess what, Donald? You lost to Joe Biden, and everything Joe Biden has done to harm this country since then is your responsibility, because your selfishness, your self-centeredness put him in the White House.
I really think that the line of attack in calling Donald Trump a loser could also work, right? A
100%.
coward and a loser. Oh, you don't like Biden? You don't like what Biden's done with the country? Obviously, I'm speaking as someone who would try to appeal or make a persuasive argument to Republican voters. If you don't like the Biden administration and everything that it's brought before you, consider the fact that Biden wouldn't be here if Trump weren't such a loser, right? That could be an effective strategy. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm very curious to see how it plays out.
Oh, no, it's definitely the right strategy, definitely. But he needs to add more meat to those bones. So you got to provide an example every time you go on TV. He's a loser, like his 6 bankruptcies. He just keeps losing. Then he lost to Joe Biden. Come on, who loses to Joe Biden? Or next time you go on, who loses to Joe Biden? I can't believe he lost to Joe Biden. Isn't Joe Biden nearly brain dead? I don't believe that, but I'm saying, like, I wouldn't go that far, let's put it that way. But for Republicans, they'll love that kind of talk. And then you add, oh, remember, like he lost the case on Trump Charity and the Trump University. And he lost both those cases and had to pay $25 million and had to pay $2 million because he was running a fake university. I would give 100 other examples of how you knock him down with Republicans. But at least Christie is on the right path. And I don't see any other Republican on the right path. All other Republicans are either going corporate robot path, which is no chance of winning, or you've got Vivek Ramaswamy going on the I love Donald Trump. I would kiss Donald Trump on the left ass and the right ass. Yeah. Well, how are you going to beat him if you're too busy kneeling down and kissing his ass? So the only person that has any chance of success is Chris Christie in that primary, even though he's polling so badly. And I'm not in the mainstream group that's like, hey, I agree with Chris Christie. I bet Republicans agree with me. No, right now they don't agree with us. But there's at least a pathway where you can get there as opposed to the others. But I wanted to quote one of our members because there's such a good point. Our guy wrote in, gotta respect Christie's fighting spirit. Wish we saw some of that on the Democrat side. And that's what every time I look at Chris Christie, I think, how pathetic is the Democratic Party? There isn't a single person in the Democratic Party making the same points Chris Christie is. You know that you guys are going to be very, very likely running against Donald Trump. He has a 40-point lead right now in the Republican primary. But Joe Biden's like, no, I'm above it. Above it? Above it? No, every day you don't attack Donald Trump on things that could hurt him, you lose voters. You lose more and more and more potential voters because you were too lazy or too ignorant about politics or too addled to figure out that Trump's your opponent and you've got to go fight him. If you leave the fighting of Trump to Chris Christie, a Republican, that's basically Democrats saying we're losers. We don't even know how to fight. We're just going to sit there and hope we win because our name isn't Donald Trump. It's pathetic.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.